What if I told you that every single day, Apple earns more money than most countries make in an entire year? Not from one product, not from one market, but from a machine, a carefully engineered money-making machine that billions of people are plugged into, and most of them don't even realize it. Today, we're pulling back the curtain, and by the end of this video, you'll never look at your iPhone the same way again. Let's start with the basics. Apple Incorporated, founded in a garage in 1976 by Steve Jobs, Steve Wozniak, and Ronald Wayne, what began as a scrappy little computer company in California is now the most valuable company on the planet. We're talking about a company that regularly crosses $400 billion in annual revenue, a company that holds more cash than most governments, a company whose products sit in the pockets, on the wrists, and inside the homes of over 2 billion people worldwide. But here's the thing that most people get wrong about Apple. They think it's just a phone company. They think Apple makes money by selling iPhones. And yes, that's a big part of the story, but it's only one chapter. The full story is far more interesting and far more profitable. So, let's break it down, piece by piece. Let's start with the elephant in the room, the iPhone. For well over a decade now, the iPhone has been Apple's single biggest revenue driver. We're talking about a product line that consistently brings in more than half of Apple's total annual revenue. That is staggering when you think about it. One product, more than half the money. But how does Apple do it? And more importantly, why is it so insanely profitable? Here's the secret. Apple doesn't compete on price, they compete on desire. Think about it. A brand new iPhone can cost anywhere from $800 to over $1,500. Meanwhile, you can get a fully functional Android smartphone under $200. And yet, people line up around the block for the iPhone. Why? Because Apple has spent decades building something that goes beyond technology. They've built an identity, an image. When you hold an iPhone, you're not just holding a phone, you're making a statement. Apple's profit margins on iPhones are believed to be somewhere in the range of 50% or higher on premium models. That means when you spend $1,000 on an iPhone Pro, Apple is pocketing roughly $500 in profit from that single sale. Let that sink in. And it gets better, because the iPhone doesn't just sell once. Apple releases a new model every single year, and their loyal fan base, and it is incredibly loyal, upgrades on a regular cycle. New chip, new camera, slightly thinner, new color, and the money flows again. The iPhone isn't just a product, it's the gateway drug into the entire Apple universe, and once you're in, getting out is harder than you'd think. Next up, the Mac. The Mac lineup includes the MacBook Air, MacBook Pro, Mac Mini, iMac, and the ultra-powerful Mac Pro. As a category, Macs typically contribute somewhere between 7 and 10% of Apple's annual revenue. Not the biggest slice of the pie, but a very important one. Here's what makes the Mac business so smart. Apple doesn't try to sell to everyone. They've deliberately positioned the Mac as a premium machine for professionals, creatives, and students who want the best. Writers, designers, video editors, software developers, musicians, these are the people who buy Macs, and these are the people who are willing to pay a premium for a machine that just works. When Apple launched its own chip, the Apple Silicon, starting with the M1, everything changed. Suddenly, MacBooks were getting insane battery life and processing speeds that outclassed machines twice their price. And the margins? Even better. The Mac is Apple's quiet, steady earner. Not flashy, not viral, but reliable, loyal revenue from a customer base that tends to stick around for years. Then there's the iPad. The iPad had an interesting journey. When Steve Jobs introduced it back in 2010, critics called it just a big iPhone. But today, the iPad is the best-selling tablet on the planet, and it's not even close. Apple sells everything from the entry-level iPad at around $400, all the way up to the iPad Pro that pushes past $1,000. The iPad contributes roughly 7 to 9% of Apple's revenue each year. What's interesting about the iPad is who buys it and why. Students use it for note-taking. Professionals use it as a second screen or a portable workstation. Doctors use it in hospitals. Airlines use it in cockpits. Artists use it with the Apple Pencil to create stunning digital art. The iPad has found a lane that most competitors have completely failed to crack, And while it might not dominate the headlines the way the iPhone does, it quietly keeps printing money for Apple year after year. Okay, now here's where things get really interesting. Wearables. This is the category that most people underestimate, and that is a serious mistake. Apple's wearables lineup includes the Apple Watch, AirPods, AirPods Pro, AirPods Max, Beats headphones, HomePod, and various accessories. Together, this category pulls in somewhere between $35 and $40 billion annually. To put that in perspective, that is bigger than the entire revenue of companies like Nike or McDonald's, and it's just the accessories category. Let's talk about AirPods for a second. Apple launched AirPods in 2016, and people mocked them. They called them wireless earbeans. They made memes about them. But here's what happened next. AirPods became a cultural phenomenon. Wearing AirPods became a status symbol, and Apple turned that into a multi-billion-dollar product line with some of the fattest margins in the entire consumer electronics industry. The Apple Watch is no different. It started as a luxury fashion item, then evolved into a genuine health device. Today, the Apple Watch monitors heart rate, blood oxygen, sleep quality, crash detection, and even ECG readings. It has saved real lives, and that combination of health utility and sleek design makes it almost irresistible to Apple's core customers. The margins on accessories and wearables are extraordinarily high, and because these products are deeply integrated with iPhones, they pull customers deeper into the Apple ecosystem, which brings us to the real moneymaker. And now, we talk about services, the part of Apple's business that Wall Street is most excited about, the part that is quietly transforming Apple from a hardware company into something far more powerful. Apple's services division includes App Store, iCloud storage subscriptions, Apple Music, Apple TV Plus, Apple Arcade, Apple Pay, Apple Card, Apple Care warranty plans, and licensing deals, including $1 billion annual payment from Google to remain the default search engine on Safari. Together, all of these services generate somewhere between $80 and $100 billion every year, and unlike hardware, services have extraordinary margins. There are no factories to run, no shipping containers to fill, no supply chains to manage. It's software, it's subscriptions, and the profits are massive. Here's what makes services so powerful. Once a customer subscribes to Apple Music, iCloud, and Apple TV Plus, they're paying Apple every single month, automatically, without thinking about it. That is what the finance world calls recurring revenue, and it is the holy grail of any business model. The App Store alone is a money-printing machine. Apple takes a commission, typically 15 to 30%, on every single purchase made through any app on the App Store. Every app subscription, every in-app purchase, every digital good sold through any iPhone app in the world, Apple gets its cut. Developers have built billion-dollar businesses on the App Store. Games like Fortnite, Candy Crush, and Clash of Clans generate hundreds of millions annually, and Apple sits at the toll booth collecting its share on every dollar that flows through. This is the future of Apple, and it's already here. Now let's zoom out and look at the bigger picture, because Apple's individual products are impressive, but what makes Apple truly extraordinary is the ecosystem. Here's how it works. You buy an iPhone, then you get AirPods because they connect instantly, then you get an Apple Watch because it pairs beautifully with your phone, then you get a MacBook because it syncs with everything seamlessly, then you subscribe to iCloud to back up all your devices, then you join Apple Music, then Apple TV Plus, then maybe Apple Care. Before you know it, you're not just buying products, you're living inside the Apple ecosystem, and leaving, that's genuinely painful. Your photos, your messages, your apps, your health data, your subscriptions, they're all in one place, on one platform, speaking one language. This is deliberate. Apple designed it this way. The industry calls it lock-in, and Apple has built the most effective version of it in the history of consumer technology. The result? Apple's customer retention rate is consistently above 90%. That means once someone buys an iPhone, there's a 9 in 10 chance their next phone will also be an iPhone. That is almost unheard of in any industry. And the more products someone owns, the higher their lifetime value to Apple. Not just once, year after year, subscription after subscription, upgrade after upgrade. All right, let's get into the hidden layer, the stuff most people never talk about. First, App Store commissions. We mentioned this briefly, but let's really think about it.
There are over 1.8 million apps in the App Store. Millions of developers around the world are working day and night to build apps, games, and tools, and Apple collects a commission on the revenue from every single one of them. It's essentially a tax on an entire economy of developers, and Apple does it without building any of those apps themselves. Second, premium pricing psychology. Apple has mastered the art of making people feel good about paying more. The unboxing experience is theatrical, the stores look like art galleries, the marketing is minimalist and aspirational. Every detail signals quality and exclusivity, and that perception alone justifies a premium price that competitors simply cannot replicate by just making a better spec sheet. Third, supply chain mastery. This one is less glamorous, but just as important. Apple is one of the most sophisticated supply chain operators on the planet. They buy components in such massive quantities that they get pricing no other company can match. They design their own chips, they control their own manufacturing.